Bachelorette villain Hayden issues an apology to Gabby and Rachel, Maddie Pruitt's not so surprise engagement, and could we be getting a double Bachelor season? Welcome back to Shared News, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Before we get into the biggest Bachelor headlines of the week, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, and if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel. As always, I'm your host, Zachary Reality, joined with Allison Van Dam and the lovely, talented Blakely McHugh and the talented Allison Van Dam. How are you guys doing today? I want to know your thoughts on this week's episode of The Bachelorette.
Well, I'm glad that I finally am lovely and talented. It took a little bit, but happy to be at the same level as the lovely and talented Blakely McHugh. I like this episode a lot. I feel like this season got kind of a slower start, and this definitely had, the most drama, the most action. We're finally aboard the cruise ship. So it made me really excited for the remainder of the season. I feel like we had more to kind of discuss and dissect than we did in maybe episodes 1 through 3.
I had a lot of thoughts about this episode. Some good, a lot not so good. But I mean, I'm still loving the season. I'm just, it was a little dramatic for me this last episode.
What was dramatic for you, Blakely? Was it Rachel? Was it the guys? Was it the cruise ship? Was it Jesse Palmer trying to speak French? Like, what was the drama for you?
100% Rachel. I just don't think that we needed, she made Gabby's date all about her. Well, maybe she didn't, but the way that it was shown was that it was like all about her. Like, obviously, like, these guys are thinking that they're coming to Gabby's date and they're watching Gabby's date. They're not thinking that they can go talk to Rachel or whatever. And she just cries. And I think I said this last week, Zach. Why does every episode have to be this whole production? It's crying. Why do I have to do this? Blah, 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 blah. Like, why can't you just be annoyed? Just be annoyed. Ugh, nobody talked to me like that. That was kind of annoying. But then whatever, move on. But literally every single thing that happens to Rachel right now is a huge deal, and it just does not have to be a huge deal. And by the way, I hated her group date.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we love Rachel here. We know she's a Pisces queen, so she's very sensitive. She's very dramatic. But it definitely seems like what we're seeing on screen is that Rachel is having a really tough time being Bachelorette. Like, it's not just like every week or every other week, because last week Gabby kind of struggled. It just seems like every date, every episode, Rachel is crying, breaking down. And it's becoming very repetitive, and it's not like we're trying to judge her. We're just kind of talking about what is shown on the screen. We want her to find love. We want to see her find her confidence and grow over the season. But I definitely understand why it's frustrating to you, Blakely, and a lot of viewers that she just keeps on crying. Allison, when do you think Rachel will get it together, or what do you think she needs to do? Is it really just that the guys are just kind of suck, or the format, or is it something that Rachel needs to find in herself?
I think there needs to be less opportunity for comparison. Now, I feel for her. This is a very intense experience. She's going on very little sleep. You don't know what questions are necessarily being asked by producers when she's doing these interview moments, if they're making her think more dramatic thoughts. But I'm with Blakely. The root of this problem, this episode, was her bringing her guys to kind of observe Gabby's date, which is automatically, like, no one's winning in this comparison. You have Gabby's date literally being about professing their love and making these grand statements to Gabby. That's awesome, but that's Gabby's date. Like, it wasn't the place of Rachel's guys to then be like, actually, like, let me get in the ring. I'd like to say a few words about Rachel. Like, it's not their date. So inherently, the second that you're comparing that stuff, you're going to feel like your guys aren't there for the same reasons. They're not as into you. So I just think maybe less so of the observing, less so of the comparison. I think it was a good step that now we have two different teams of guys. I'm worried about if Logan decides to drop this bomb on her that he maybe is there for Gabby instead of her. I think maybe that'll be a big catastrophe, but hopefully after that, she has a smaller group of guys who she knows are there for her. And I think she just needs to be confident and rely on the connections she does have. Like this dramatic group date attendance that caused her to cry was the day after a really, really great date with Tino. So I think if she just, took the time to focus on the connections she does have, that'll help her, not feel so up and down and confused all the time.
So, in The Incredibles where Edna Mose has the newspaper and she hits Elastigirl in the head and she says, "Get yourself together." We need Edna to come just do that to Rachel for a second, get herself together, and proceed on.
Yeah, or maybe Gabby can be Edna's role and just kind of be like, Rachel, get it
Yeah,
together. Because I feel like Gabby's obviously having
exactly.
tough weeks as well. She's kind of been vulnerable, opening up about her experiences and her,
Hmm.
strained relationship with her mom. But she just seems to have it a little bit more together. Maybe she's a little bit older than Rachel, but Rachel's also been getting a lot of, rejection and just like a lot of events that are
Hmm.
probably causing her to spiral. So we do have to give her the benefit of the doubt. And most recently this week, we saw Hayden kind of get confronted by Rachel, or definitely get confronted when some of the comments he made in the house got back to Rachel from Meatball. So now we know why Meatball needed to stay another week, because he had to deliver the
Mm.
tea. And it did not end up going over well, as Rachel sent Hayden home after he confessed his upsetness and difficulties he's having with his dog Rambo at home. It didn't really matter. I mean, obviously, like, the dog, we're praying for the dog. We hope the dog is okay, but we can't really excuse Hayden's behavior. Some of the comments he made were not super cool. They got back to Rachel, and they were not able to find a happy medium. Now, Hayden actually took to Instagram to explain himself now that he was sent home and issue out an apology. And Hayden says, "You saw me at my absolute worst and lowest moment. My complete lapse of judgment was not only disappointing, but also unacceptable. I want to express my deepest apology to both Gabby and Rachel for my actions. I take full responsibility. I really hate how this season ended, but this experience was not one that I was mentally or emotionally prepared for with the current things going on in my life." So obviously he was talking about his dog Rambo and leaving him at home. I do have an update on Rambo. He is still alive. He's hanging in there. And Hayden is spending every minute with him. What did you guys think about the Hayden and Rachel confrontation? And how do you think his apology is going to do over with the girls? We know the Men Tell All is probably being filmed next week. So how do we think the two of them are going to move forward? Do you guys accept Hayden's apology?
I loved how Rachel handled this moment, for someone who we've seen so much emotion from and kind of, have maybe not a breakdown that seems extreme, but needed to remove herself, take some time. I love that she just went straight from Meatball back to Hayden, pulled him aside. I was cracking up when it reminded me of like a teacher or a parent when she's like, "Do you know why I'm pulling you?" Like making him reflect. And he's like, "Well, I
Yeah.
assumed it was about our
You mean
conversation
the
about
dog?
Rambo." And she goes, "The dog?" Like, I
The
just like loved how
dog?
she handled that. It was so funny. I mean, I'm glad he posted this because he also posted something after last week's episode when he said, about his comments to Gabby about her being rough around the edges. And that did not take, I feel like, any sort of accountability compared to, the Jacob post that we saw. Jacob also then did like kind of an exclusive interview with E! News and said, "I realize this Instagram apology isn't enough. I would love to say it to her in person." Like, we just watched Jacob handle it so well. And I was kind of disappointed by Hayden. So I guess at least this week he did say, "I want to express my deepest apology." Do I believe him? No, because I think if he was genuine, he would have been more genuine last week. I think he could have elaborated more. I mean, who knows? He's not my favorite
Yeah.
person. I kind of question why he brought up this whole situation in general. It wasn't a one-on-one date. It really had nothing to do with his relationship or his connection with Rachel. We talk a lot about, like the sympathy rose, the pity rose, and it gave me those vibes. And that's coming from someone who is a dog owner and would lay down my life for a dog. Like, obviously, Rambo looks adorable. I don't wish him any ill will or any harm, but the whole situation just kind of read the wrong way to me. Hayden's not my favorite.
I don't think he was allowed to give his apology last week because he was still on the show. So I think that that's probably why we didn't get like a full explanation or responsibility until this week, because it kind of had to play out on the show. And I actually think it was important that he opened up about his dog, because if he didn't, we wouldn't have saw that softer side of Hayden, and we would have just thought of him as this guy who makes these sly and inappropriate comments about women. So I kind of think it was fair to just show all aspects of him, because he was on his way out, and at least we know he does have a heart, because if we didn't see that side of him with his dog, we would have just thought he was this awful human being. So, Blakely, what do you think about his apology, and how do you think it's going to play out at the Men Tell All next week?
Well, to respond to what you said first, I don't know. What you just said, it didn't give me that at all. It didn't make me feel like Hayden
Okay.
has a softer side. It didn't make me feel like it saved his face or get to know him. I mean, we are all going to be devastated over a really cute golden retriever, any dog, any animal at this point that has a brain tumor where his brain caves in and he has to go through radiation and has a cancer duck and a cancer paw. Like, we are all going to, I mean, unless you're a psychopath, going to have a soft spot for that. It really didn't tell me. I think his actions told me more about who Hayden is and spoke louder than his book about Rambo. That being said, yeah, I'm not a fan of this guy. I mean, thank you for the apology, but it doesn't feel enough. And it still feels like there's it's still a little bit of an excuse, like him saying I wasn't mentally, he said mentally and emotionally, in the place to be on the show. Well, then don't go on the show. Or, the other
Hmm.
thing is like that feels like an excuse to me because even when I'm not mentally and emotionally ready or available for something, I'm not calling people the B word. I'm not telling people they're rough around the edges. I'm not saying, he said something to the degree of like, how dumb are you to refer to yourself as being rough around the edges and then get mad when somebody says you're rough around the edges, Like, I don't do those things when I'm mentally and emotionally not available. I may be sad, but I'm
Hmm.
not certainly not mean. I may say one thing that I don't mean, but he was one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. So I don't know. He hasn't quite saved face for me. There's always time for redemption. So I think that if that redemption comes, that will come at the after the final rose or the men tell all, or if he has a future on any
Maybe
Bachelor
Paradise.
franchise, maybe Paradise. So I'm not ruling out a redemption because it's a possible, but can we talk about the hug?
It was a little awkward, the hug. She was not really
Yeah.
feeling it. But I think at the bottom of the day is that Hayden shouldn't have left to go on the show. If he had a dog struggling at home that he wanted to spend every moment with, he shouldn't have left to go away for weeks of filming. And I think that this kind of happened almost last season or the season before with Michael A. He realized that he couldn't be away from his son. And I mean, it's just kind of like one of those things you don't really know how hard it is until you're like away for so long. But it is something you have to think about because if you can't, give your all or be present to the lead you're trying to fall in love with because you're just thinking about what's going on at home and who you have to take care of at home, it's definitely going to, weigh on you over time.
This has nothing to do with the dog, though. At the end of the day, he shouldn't have gone on this show because he's comparing these two women to his ex. He's talking about their physicality versus his ex. He's saying they don't hold a candle to his ex. He's referring to them as B's. He's using swear words. He's calling them dumb A's, all this other stuff. He's saying they're rough around the edges. He's saying he doesn't want to settle. Those are the reasons he shouldn't have come on this show.
I mean, if I had a mic, well, I do have a mic, but I can't drop it. And by the way, if we're making comparisons to other people who came on the show when they probably mentally and emotionally were not available, Michael A., Sarah Trott from Matt James's season, neither of those people were disrespectful to the leads or the people who surrounded them. So to say, to blame your behavior on not being emotionally and mentally available or ready for this journey because of your dog Rambo, then, I just don't appreciate, it's fine if you went on and you realized, oh, I shouldn't have gone on because I'm missing my dog. But don't go and say the reason his apology is diluted because he is now blaming and not being you know what I'm saying? Because of the dog. When we've had other people go on, and I'll be ready and be nice.
That's fair. Well, I mean, and then I think we can all agree that Hayden is immature and, definitely immature in relationships and just has some growing to do in his personal life. And he's probably not ready to get married or engaged. So I look forward to seeing, how the conversation goes, at the Men Tell All, which is going to be filmed next week, but won't air for about a month. So he's gone from the journey now. There's about 7 guys left for Gabby and Rachel. We're going to get into some other Bachelor news. Maddie Pruitt not so surprise engagement. Now, Maddie was originally on Peter's season and she got engaged over the weekend to her boyfriend, Grant. Now, the pair had announced their relationship publicly just 3 months ago. However, they've been dating the past 9 months, so they were dating a little bit more in private. Now, Maddie took to Instagram to write, "You are worth the wait." And Maddie is very much in touch with her faith and waited to do the deed until marriage. Now, fans were questioning how she ended up being in the most perfect bridal dress for the engagement, and people shared that Maddie had a heads up and her mom and sister were in the bathroom waiting for her with the dress before she headed down to the beach. She thought she was taking pictures for her friend's birthday, and her fiance actually surprised her. Now, this dress was the dress Maddie wanted to get engaged in, so even though it was a surprise engagement, she did have a heads up to put the dress on and get touched up before going down to the beach and taking pictures. So congratulations to Maddie and Grant. We're happy for any couple that is engaged. But what do you guys think about this? This is an interesting conversation. When you guys get engaged, do you want to be completely surprised where you're not in the right outfit, your makeup is going to be running, your hair is all messed up? Or do you want a little bit of a heads up to make sure you look presentable before, taking a bunch of pictures and getting engaged?
Yeah, I think there's maybe like an in-between middle ground. I liked that this, was somewhat of a surprise, but she had a moment to kind of get touched up or look the way she wanted to look. I think we saw that on the Kardashians too. They are on a different level, obviously, because they're the Kardashians, bringing in a whole glam team for Kourtney after the engagement. So I think there is a middle ground. I don't know if I'd want to know fully. That feels like a bit much. But yeah, if I'm like sweaty and leaving SoulCycle, I'm not sure that's like the ideal time to get engaged either. So I would like to have a middle ground if possible, but maybe that's asking for too much. Blakely, what do you think?
I need to have my nails done. I would like my hair to be done. I mean, there are many ways you can do that. Like your friends can say, we're going out to brunch, look cute, whatever. Let me take you to get your nails done. I've been feeling, there are many ways that you can make it work where your girl's got her nails done and she's in a cute outfit and she's ready to get engaged without telling them. I mean, and that being said, I'm sure that they've had conversations that, like kind of like what you brought up, Zach, it kind of not being such a surprise. People were really confused how the pictures were already sold to people, like then she should have known about, planned, yada, yada, yada. I'm sure that they've had conversations that they would do a spread before whenever it happened. And then Grant was probably in contact with people and her family or her manager. I mean, she probably has so many people around her that would be in contact with people without Maddie having to be in contact with them to know that it was happening. But if that's how she wanted it, she wanted to wear that dress, then she knew that the surprise would be spoiled a little bit, but it was still like great for her. So that's how I feel, but I better be done up for mine.
I mean, it definitely was a surprise. Like she didn't even know. Yeah, we'll make sure, Blakely. Like the thing is, Maddie didn't even know that Grant was going to be in Florida. Like she was like with her friends, so it definitely was a surprise. It's just that she had this 30-minute heads up to like put this dress on and like get touched up. Like she already had her hair and makeup done for the most part because she was taking pictures for a friend's birthday. But it probably also is because, these are pictures that are going to be published in People magazine and like everywhere. So she really wanted them to be perfect. I personally would, if it was me, would want my engagement to be like so surprised. Like I don't need a 30-minute heads up. Like I don't even care what I look like. But I guess because
Do you want to be disheveled?
They knew that these pictures, honestly, I don't care because I want to be so surprised. But I would think that my fiance would make sure that I'm at least, somewhat presentable. But I get that she wanted these pictures to look a certain way. They're going to be published everywhere for the world to see. I mean, they also could have got engaged privately and then did another, engagement photo shoot for the magazine too, separately, like a few days later if they wanted to do that. I mean, people get engaged all the time and then do engagement photo shoots, a few weeks, a month later, 2 months later. So, I mean, it really is up to Maddie. I think this is just the way she wanted it. And we have to mention that this guy, it comes from $1 billion family. And I mean, that's kind of crazy. She's definitely leveling up from Peter. We all saw what happened on Peter's season with Barb and the whole fallout with that. Now, Peter's other exes, Hannah Ann, also ended up dating a Super Bowl champion. And then Sydney ended up getting married to Fred Warner, who was a professional football player. I mean, Allison, what does it say about the girls from Peter's season that they're all leveling up and dating these like really successful men?
I mean, so proud of them. Pop off, you do you. And I think they're all like genuinely happy too. Like none of them strike me as, in any way social climbing or gold digging, whatever. Like I think about Maddie. Maddie's really created her own platform. And since leaving The Bachelor, she lost some followers, but really gained a ton as she kind of honed into her own individual brand, speaking. I believe she's like, Christian speaker. She goes around and does all these kind of inspirational Christian speeches and stuff like that. So she really has honed in on what's important to her and what she's passionate about and has kind of built, these platforms, this brand for herself. So while maybe it's not valued at $1 billion, I'm sure that's something that, her fiance and her fiance's family really respects because it's like, no, she's out there, she's hustling, she's doing her own thing too. So I'm like applauding the power couple at this point. That's the dream right there.
Yeah, I mean,
By the way,
you can marry someone with money, but you also want to have your own things going on for yourself.
And it's not just a little bit of money. Like that dad has $1.5 billion set for life. And just poor Peter. He had all of these really amazing women and lost all of them. And then some.
Do you think that they should make Peter the Bachelor again, Blakely?
No. But I did say before I want to see him on Bachelor in Paradise. But I don't think he should be the Bachelor again.
Me too. He talked about that. He said that he was almost going to go to Paradise, and then he ended up not going.
Yeah.
But either way, congratulations to Maddie and Grant. They did their engagement their way. And yeah, I mean, really, it's to each their own. Now, our last topic today is, are we going to get 2 Bachelors next season? Now, there has been so much outrage from Bachelor fans over pitting the 2 leads against each other this season on The Bachelorette. And with Bachelor casting wrapping up right now, we know the next season of The Bachelor is going to start filming in September because it usually airs in January. So we'll probably find out who the next lead is within the next month, especially when things get leaked. So fans are wondering if they're going to do 2 Bachelors like they did 2 Bachelorettes. Now, a lot of people are pulling for Andrew and Greg, like myself, because they are best friends, just like Gabby and Rachel. And it would make a lot of sense. They seem to be eligible bachelors. But fans are also pulling for Nate from this season and Michael A, because they could possibly do a double daddy season because they're both single dads. We know Paradise airs in September, so we are going to see Paradise before The Bachelor. And if they want to pick someone from Paradise, even though it's not going to air yet, we all know how these Bachelor edits work. So it is possible we'll find out who the Bachelor is before Paradise airs, kind of like what happened with Clayton when we knew he was the Bachelor before Michelle's season aired. So there is a lot of speculation and predictions, but I gotta know, where are your heads at? Do you guys want 2 Bachelors? Is there a guy from Michelle's season, Katie's season, Rachel and Gabby's season that you think would be a good lead, double leads? What do you guys think is gonna happen?
I mean, I think it would be fun. I think it's only fair if you're going to have 2 bachelorettes. I mean, there's already less bachelorettes than there are bachelors. So I think maybe, yeah, give them a little taste of their own medicine. I think Greg and Andrew would be a very, very fun duo. I've been in the same room as both of them, and I was just laughing the entire time. They like banter off of each other. They're both like such like genuine good guys while also both being so attractive. Like they are the kind of ideal bachelor types. I think the hardest part would just be the women choosing between the 2 of them because they're both so great. But yeah, I also think Nate from this season would be a great bachelor. I don't know if we'll ever see Michael A on our screens again. I think America fell in love with him on Katie's season. I think there were, rumors and talks about, he would be a great bachelor. I mean, I don't know if those conversations happened or what happened with them, but I have a feeling that if he wasn't the Bachelor right away, or if we haven't seen him since, I'm not sure now, a couple years later, he'll be like gunning for it. But yeah, I think Nate from this season could be a great standalone Bachelor on his own, or Greg and Andrew as a duo.
Here's my thought though. Like, I know we're all for equality, but I don't know that I'm like needing equality in this situation. Like, just because we had 2 female leads, that means we have to have 2 male leads. Like, I just don't think that like there necessarily needs to be a balance there. I don't think that there was any thought process to have 2 female leads because I didn't think 1 female lead was strong enough. I genuinely think that they thought this would be great because they have such a great friendship and America has fallen in love with these 2 people. Let's now make them both the leads. There was no like negativeness for why they became the leads. I feel like a lot of people have turned it into that because you're pitting women against each other, and why do women have to share the spot? Like I while I see those perspectives, I don't believe any of that was the reasoning. I genuinely think it was because Bachelor Nation fell in love with Rachel and Gabby. They, felt their pain at the end of their season and they loved their relationship. So it just seemed like a match made in heaven. Why that? And the reason why they probably didn't think about it for Greg and Andrew is because they didn't go home at the same time. They didn't have the same ending. They didn't have that bromance that we on TV that we saw. We saw their bromance grow afterwards. We saw Gabby's and Rachel's friendship throughout the entire season and especially towards the end. So I don't know that because we had two female leads, we need to have two male leads. Now, if it happens, I think Greg and Andrew would be great. I think that they're hilarious. I think it would bring a lot of levity to the show. I think it'd be really funny. I don't think we'd have, a lot of the comparisons or the humiliation, if you will, which Rachel keeps calling it, or the, I don't think that we would see that with the men because men are just generally a lot less dramatic and emotional in that regard, and they talk about things a lot differently. So I think it would be great, but again, I don't think that it needs to happen. Although I think that the Bachelor would get a lot of negative responses from people because then they would, of how they already are getting it, if you will.
I want to see Greg and Andrew be the Bachelors. I want to see two leads. After what just happened this season, I think they need to do two Bachelors and put it to the fire and see how it goes. So I'm all on board for that. Blakely, if you don't want two Bachelors, is there a guy over the past year that you think would be a good lead? Maybe even someone from this season. We don't know how it's going to end yet and who Rachel and Gabby are going to pick, but we're going to find out who the Bachelor is within the month.
You're always putting me on the spot for these questions, and I just don't have
it was in the script.
Contestant,
it was in the script.
Well, I did tell you I only read a little bit of it, so.
And that was that's on you, babe.
You're right, and that's on me. I'll accept. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I would still love to have Mike Johnson. There was something that
down.
stuck with me from what? Allison, stop that. From
so here's the thing.
Hannah's season, and I
agreed with you,
okay.
but I once agreed with you. He was my
change your
favorite
mind?
person from Hannah Brown's season, but his Paradise performance did not deliver.
I don't even remember his
on.
Paradise performance. Is that why you're saying that?
Exactly. He was in it for like a minute.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe there's
he didn't
a
get
reason.
a Bachelor edit in Paradise.
But
Okay.
he's wholesome and kind and sweet and handsome and has a great smile. I just think he'd be great. And oftentimes it's not the lead that's creating all the drama. Meanwhile, I guess Rachel's being really dramatic, but a lot of time it's the contestants that are creating the drama. So Mike doesn't have to be, the talk of the show. The contestants will make that happen.
We'll see what happens. We'll keep you guys updated here at Shared News. Let us know your thoughts on who you think should be the next Bachelor. Should there be double Bachelor seasons? Do you guys accept Hayden's apology? And how would you guys like your dream engagement to go? Do you want a heads up? Do you want to be surprised? Let us know all of your thoughts on these Bachelor headlines of the week in the comments down below. And before you head out of here, do not forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you're always updated on all things Bachelor Nation. As always, I'm your host, Zachary Reality, with Allison Van Dam and Blakely McHugh. Our social media handles are on the screen right now, so be sure to give us a follow. Come say hello. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.